So here we must decide whether, if the authors of the article "Why should the baby live" are asserting empirically a positive outcome that we consider a norm in society that everyone in society could agree to as being legally a legally moral rational action. Even if we decided to or decided not to consent to it as policy. Policy's validity are usually formed, debated and held to scrutiny by society, be that there is no specific legal privilege provided to academics to break laws. Just because a citizen refers to themselves as a subjective name such as academic, the whole society does not. The whole society decides, not just a group that sees itself as special with abnormal liberties to conform to legal norms. To not conform to legal norms. And the fact that the authors, Dr. Francesca Minerva and Dr. Albani, asserted that killing children outside the womb is no different than inside the womb, and thus the traditional argument by pro-abortionists that there is their assertion that there is a fundamental difference between a baby in the womb or to a baby being in the process of leaving the birth canal in the case of partial birth abortions, which of course are a major subjects even in US national elections. Although my understanding is that some states are allowed to practice it, but then there is another case about, because of Roe versus Wade, about the tension between whether federal law should be able to allow all states to do partial birth abortions, which of course, there's a raging debate about that. And the baby after the process of being born. So there is no biological difference between there's no biological difference. Both pro and anti-abortionists and pro-life concepts could agree on that. The fact, though, is that when a human being is formed as a single cell and as a multi-celled human being, it is as much subject to events such as miscarriage or you or I being run over by a cow escaping from a field or a car or something, legally and biologically, a human being still has a natural right to life. Even if others believe a human being is just potential in the form of human sperm or egg or human eggs. Once those two genetic codes become one code, then that is a potential human being. It is a living being from the biological empirical point of view. However, the argument then derives from the idea that all human rights are overthrown by where a human being is. If a human embryonic cell is in a test tube created by a lab to be used as material, it is a human life, potentially, or it is a human life, but unless it had a chance in the womb, ethically speaking, does it have rights? And the fact that I put it rather than he or she sort of maybe you might get an idea of what I believe about that or not. But I'll continue on. I'll try and, embryonic research bodies are under ethical codes and are regulated by the state and law as agents of society, but the origins of this science is conventions. Unwritten rules may well have more force than law. In reality, does a human embryonic corporation as legal non-human person, they are a legal person because they're a corporation, have ownership over the legal person of a human being as a single cell or as a developing person? These are difficult questions which will only be solved incrementally, as only via consent of the parties involved in courts through the legal democratic process of national societies sets. Frankly, the idea of a baby magically being conveyed personhood because he or she is leaving the birth canal into the wider world is illogical unless the reason the law developed this neutral view on the process of giving birth by one human being to another was to prevent infanticide and to prevent women being forced to terminate pregnancies by killing babies in the womb or by coercive entity, i.e. such as a state, as in Marxist China, or by their sexual partner or the other parent of the child, or the current sexual partner or the other parent of the child. This is why politicians developed the concept of a woman's right to choose. It was done, I would assert, for altruistic reasons in order to prevent the death of mothers who were used unregulated private backstreet abortionists to kill their children in the womb. This obviously was a negative development as mothers and babies died, and from an empirical view, the investment of society in the development of human beings who died was lost. From a cynical economic and political point of view of parasitical capitalists and Marxists, it was a loss of human capital in the case of the mother, but also neither political viewpoint, capitalist Marxists saw babies as anything but material costs, i.e. more mouths to feed, which is certainly the way Marxist China sees them, which is, of course, a short-term irrationalist view. Since this is based on Malthusian ideas, let me just explain it. Thomas Malthus, he was an economist who believed that the population, when he was around in the 17th and 18th century, once it got to a certain point, everybody would start to starve and they would have to create wars and diseases to cull the population down. So that's why I'm using that term. Since it is based on Malthusian ideas of human beings needing to be limited in their population growth, but takes no recognition of the context that technology and human talent has on increasing the utility of known resources as well as exploiting new resources with new technology and talent to increase goods and services applications, so that human progress and survival is apt to conditions. It's the ability to adapt and be apt to conditions that allow the population to increase in accordance with nature, i.e. for the human species to carry on surviving.